Hello, welcome to our channel.
Gateways on either side of the front cabin, those being the one which you entered by and the one on the opposite side. In the highly unlikely event of an emergency, additional exits may be used in the direction of the skipping crew. These consist of the large sliding windows in the lower saloon, the windows or open sides in the front cabin, and the open sides around the upper deck. Buoyant apparatus consisting of life rings and life rafts is stored around the outside of the upper deck and above the front cabin. In the event of any emergency, please remain calm and await further instructions from the skipping crew. If you are accompanying small children, please keep them with you at all times. And if you have bird food purchased either from our gift shop or on board, please throw it well clear of the vessel. Ensure also that this is the only thing which you throw overboard. All rubbish must be placed in the bins provided or taken ashore. Finally, as with all our public sailings, there is to be no smoking on any part of this boat. We thank you for your cooperation, and if you have any questions or if there is anything we can do to make your trip more enjoyable, please do not hesitate to ask. Hurry. To our left is Jacob's Island, formerly called Corporation Island. It was renamed after a well-known local councillor and boat builder called Arthur Jacobs. It was here that some of the largest wooden boats, almost twice the length of this one, were built in the now dismantled and long-forgotten boat houses and slipways of the Jacobs Yard. As we proceed past Brockhurst Meadows to our right, some more of the Eaton College buildings become visible, as do the spires of Eaton College Chapel, which is built in an almost identical style to St George's Chapel in Windsor Castle. It's known as the perpendicular Gothic style of architecture. Eaton College was founded in 1440 by King Henry VI, originally naming it the King's College of Our Lady of Eaton beside Windsor. Incidentally, the college owns nearly all of the land on our right-hand side from here to well beyond our turning point. They in fact own portions of land in many parts of the country, this being largely due to an outdated practice whereby parents of Eton boys used to donate land to the college in order to offset fees. Through the trees to our left shortly, we will see a full-size replica of a Hawker Hurricane fighter plane. This is a memorial to its designer, Sir Sidney Cam, whose former home stands a few hundred yards beyond. This plane bears the markings of one flown in the Battle of Britain by squadron leader John Grandy, who was Constable and Governor of Windsor Castle from 1978 to 1988. Sir Sidney Cam was a pupil of Royal Free School in Windsor. During this time he designed and built model aeroplanes which he then sold to the boys of Eaton College. Whilst the Hurricane was his best known aircraft, Cam also designed the Hunter in 1951, which in 1953 went on to break the world speed record of 727 miles per hour. Cam's final design was the Harrier, which remained in RAF service for 50 years until 2010, and it is still flown by the US Marines as the AV-8B. Ahead of us is the Windsor Railway Bridge, being one of several across the Thames designed by Isambard King Brunel, the famous Victorian engineer. The bridge was completed in 1849 for Queen Victoria, and it brought the Great Western Railway network right up to the front of Windsor Castle. The design of this bridge was unique in its day, as were many of Brunel's designs. This one because the 187-foot central span is not secured to the sides in any way. It simply rests there under its own weight on 6 bearings, allowing for expansion and contraction of the ironworks during temperature changes. This type of span is known as a bowstring arch, and the brick viaduct was constructed between 1861 and 1865, replacing an original wooden trestle structure. The arches were incorporated into the design to prevent floodwater from being trapped on the upstream side in the event of the Thames bursting its banks. It's also believed to be Brunel's oldest surviving structure still in continuous use, and was granted Grade 2 listed status in 1970. It's called Ray's Island, and is in fact the largest on the Upper Thames, being about a mile long. The only Thames island longer than this one is Canvey Island on the Thames estuary beyond London. It's also one of only 2 figure-of-8 courses in the country, the track having been laid out in this way in order to fit the required length of track into the limited space offered by the island. response to recent rainfall. Allowing faster flow during wet weather prevents a build-up in level which could lead to flooding, while in dry weather the weir gates are closed in, holding the water back but maintaining a safe depth for boats to navigate. Indeed, the lock keepers maintain a chain of communication along the river, keeping the upper Thames at a more or less constant level throughout the year. Towards the right-hand end of the weir is the Salmon Ladder, this being a narrow channel divided lengthways by a series of baffles which slow the water down and cause slight backflow, assisting the migrating salmon in their arduous journey to the source of the river. Salmon were successfully reintroduced to the Thames in 1982 after a long absence, and they've become firmly re-established since then. This is mainly due to the cleanliness of the water these days, the Thames in fact being now officially recognised as one of the world's cleanest metropolitan rivers, that is to say one which flows through major towns and cities. This was not always the case though, and in the 1800s the river was so badly polluted that it was declared dead in the London area, and that no fish or bird life could survive in or around the water. The smell of the river was unbearable to those who lived or worked near it. Diseases such as typhoid and cholera were rife, and this period was known as the Great Stink. The small wooden footbridge coming up on our left is Long Bridge, aptly nicknamed the Chinese Bridge due to the three arches which are reminiscent of the famous willow pottery pattern. The backwater beyond the bridge is the Cuckoo Weir stream, and although there is no weir on this stretch of water, it was considered as the location for one, which was subsequently built at Boveney. A little further along this stream is the headquarters of Swan Lifeline, one of several charities along the Thames which care for sick and injured swans. Swans on the Thames fall under three divisions of ownership, those being the Reigning Monarch and the city livery companies of dyers and vintners. This tradition goes back to the 12th century, when the Reigning Monarch held claim to all wild swans on the Thames, as in those days swans were a popular source of food for royalty. Then under a royal charter in the 15th century, the city livery companies were granted an equal share, and the ceremony of swan-upping began. This involves representatives of the two livery companies and the royal household rowing upriver, catching and marking all that year's cygnets in order to establish ownership. Ahead of us we will soon see one of the finest views of Windsor Castle. It was on this same site that in 1070 William the Conqueror built a simple wooden fortress, choosing this site for its all-round defensibility with views along the Thames Valley, allowing him to guard the western approaches to London. Prior to the Norman conquest, Edward the Confessor had held court at the royal manor of Kingsbury, in what we now know as Old Windsor, until his death in January 1066. The proximity to the River Thames was no doubt the prime reason for choosing this location, the waterway being the main highway to London in the east. After the Norman conquest, William built a ring of fortresses within one day's march of London, of which Windsor is undoubtedly the finest. In addition, the extensive Windsor Forest offered excellent hunting, and William chose to live there until his death in 1087. The concept of castles was unknown to the Saxons, and it was part of William's plan to ensure the permanence of the conquest. The castle has been added to by various monarchs, not always to the benefit of its appearance, until the arrival of King George IV. He employed the architect James Wyatt, who did much to reshape and modernise the castle, improving the groupings of the buildings. He then realised the need to raise the height of